Asturias has affected Guatemala in many different ways, including politics, education, and literature. His contributions to Guatemala can be seen to this day, and his legacy can help us remember the past and contribute to our knowledge regarding Guatemala during a time period where people were ruled by dictators and foreign large companies. It will help us remember a time where indigenous people were oppressed and abused, but it will also help us remember the good things like the Mayan culture, legends, and traditions. Son of Ernesto Asturias and Maria Rosales, Miguel Ángel Asturias was born in Guatemala City on October 19, 1899. He lived in Guatemala during his childhood and adolescence, a time period in which his parents were at conflict with the government of Manuel Estrada Cabrera. During his childhood, many things occurred that would later inspire him on his literary works. While he was in high school, he and his classmates organized protests and strikes against the government of Manuel Estrada Cabrera. After graduating from school, Miguel Ángel Asturias went to the University of San Carlos, where he studied law and graduated with the thesis called El Problema Social del Indio. After graduating, Miguel Ángel Asturias founded the popular University of Guatemala. This university was meant for the people who couldn't afford expensive universities. In 1923, the life of Miguel Ángel would change because he was leaving Guatemala to study political economy in London, England. During this trip, Miguel Ángel Asturias traveled to France and lived there for the next 10 years instead of his planned life in London. While living in France, Miguel Ángel Asturias studied Mayan culture and religion at the University of Sorbonne in France. During this time period of his life, Miguel Ángel Asturias traveled back and forth from France to Guatemala. After teaching in Guatemala for a couple of months, Miguel Ángel Asturias went back to Europe, where he published his first book called Leyendas de Guatemala in the city of Madrid, Spain in 1930. The book Leyendas de Guatemala tells 7 different legends that take place in the country of Guatemala. Several of the legends that are written in this book were legends told by the Mayan people back then and were based on the events that occurred in the past, such as the invasion of Mayan villages on Lake Atitlan. Other legends told in this book, like the legend of Ku Klux Klan, are based on Mayan religion. In several of the legends told in this book, Miguel Ángel Asturias compares the Mayan culture and the Spanish culture. The book also contains a lot of magical realism throughout all of the legends. Each of these legends have very different characters and events, but all of them relate to the Mayan culture in some way. Miguel Ángel Asturias started to write his book called El Señor Presidente from 1923 to 1933 in Paris. He returned to Guatemala and decided not to publish the book because it was during a time where Jorge Ubico ruled and Miguel Ángel Asturias had problems with his government. The book wasn't published for 13 years until Guatemala got a new government. The new president of Guatemala was named Juan José Arevalo. Juan José Arevalo is considered one of the best presidents Guatemala has had. Arevalo shared many thoughts with Miguel Ángel Asturias because he cared for education. Arevalo wrote a book called Método Nacional, which was used in schools to learn how to write. He also created El Alba with some colleagues, which was a magazine that had important news of the time. The similar ideology between Arevalo and Asturias caused a good relationship between the two of them, and Arevalo named Miguel Ángel Asturias the ambassador of Mexico. It was finally in Mexico City in 1946 where he first published El Señor Presidente. The book El Señor Presidente is about many controversial topics that took place here in Guatemala, which include dictatorship. The book is based on the dictatorship of Manuel Estrada Cabrera. It describes the life of different people under his dictatorship. Just in the first chapter, Miguel Ángel Asturias shows how unfair the life under a dictatorship was. He shows how people didn't have fair trials and were killed for no reason at all. The book contains many different literary elements, including surrealism. Despite the book having Manuel Estrada Cabrera as an antagonist, Cabrera accomplished many good things too. He fixed many roads and modernized a lot of the country's technology through the United Fruit Company. Despite achieving good things for Guatemala, he is remembered for the things he did wrong. Between 1940 and 1950, Guatemala was under the rule of 2 different presidents, the first being Jorge Ubico and the second being Juan José Arevalo. Jorge Ubico came to power under changes to the constitution and manipulated elections. He wanted to enhance Guatemala's economy by allying with the United States. He made his presidential term twice as long than it was meant to be. Despite making efforts to improve the economy, Jorge Ubico had to fight against popular protests and had to resign to the presidency on April 1st, 1944. Jorge Ubico went to the United States and died 2 years later. The next year, Juan José Arevalo became the president of Guatemala. He, like Miguel Ángel Asturias, was a great writer. He believed that the best way to make Guatemala a better place was education. He implemented laws that helped the normal workers, which included the payment of extra working hours and a short vacation period. He made working hours less than what they were before and made a rule that obligated business and landowners pay minimum wages. After Arevalo's presidency was over, he was named an ambassador by Jacobo Arbenz. This soon ended after the United States overthrew Jacobo Arbenz. All of the presidents of Guatemala during the 1940s and 50s affected Miguel Ángel Asturias in both positive and negative ways. During these decades, Miguel Ángel Asturias didn't agree with a lot of things that Jorge Ubico did. This disagreement stopped Miguel Ángel Asturias from publishing his book El Señor Presidente, and they also led him to write a book called Hombres de Maíz. Miguel Ángel lived in foreign countries during Jorge Ubico's presidency, but came back to Guatemala when Juan José Arevalo became the president. Miguel Ángel continued traveling, and by 1949 he published Hombres de Maíz. The book was published in Argentina. The book Hombres de Maíz is based on the lives of Mayan people. It revolves around the oppression that they felt and how big companies and businesses were taking advantage of them, especially the United Fruit Company. It also talks about how people felt that these companies were against their beliefs and that they were slowly eliminating their ancestral traditions, which made many of these people insecure. Like many other books that Miguel Ángel Asturias wrote, it contains a lot of magical realism. Miguel Ángel Asturias didn't have any complications while publishing the book because Jorge Ubico had died in 1946. Miguel Ángel Asturias wrote many important pieces of work, and all of them shall be remembered. From 1950 to 1960, Miguel Ángel Asturias wrote a trilogy of books called La Trilogía Bananera. This trilogy of books consists of Viento Fuerte, El Papa Verde, and Los Ojos de los Enterrados. Miguel Ángel Asturias had many other literary works, all of which are really important. These include Mulata de Tal, Rayito de Estrella, and Weekend in Guatemala. On December 10, 1967, Miguel Ángel Asturias was awarded with the Nobel Prize of Literature. This award was given to him for his vivid literary achievement, deep-rooted in the national traits and traditions of Indian people of Latin America. Miguel Ángel Asturias was honored to become a Nobel Prize winner, and as he said during his speech, "In my case, I became part of the Nobel family, the least known among the many that could be chosen." Miguel Ángel Asturias also received the Lenin Peace Prize in 1966 for his books, which were considered by the Soviet Union anti-imperialist. Miguel Ángel Asturias wasn't a leader because he led an army during a war or because he led protests and revolts. He was a leader at what he did best, which was his literature. He was a leader in Latin American literature, and because of his great literary works, he got awarded with one of the best prizes a writer can get. Throughout his writings, he shows how indigenous people should be treated properly and how they shouldn't be exploited. He shows the negative impacts of foreign countries in Guatemala, and with his books he makes sure everyone is clear about how Guatemala was taken advantage from other countries and its own government. Because of him, a lot of Mayan people, culture, and traditions will be remembered as something good. Even if sometimes people forget, it will be reminded that the indigenous people are still human beings and they should be treated equally. And that is something that many people didn't have clear when he wrote all of these books. He impacted many upcoming Latin American writers and left behind a lot of knowledge within his books.